So why don't we talk about the different types of parenting? And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of talk about how it affects treatment, the different types. And then we're going to go into with the specific type that we recommend. And obviously everyone recommends authoritative parenting, which you're going to talk about. How do we become more authoritative in terms of parenting?
Yeah.
So why don't we start with that? So why don't you share the different types of parenting and kind of a brief explanation of each of those parenting? That would be awesome.
Sure. Yeah. So there are 4 different types of parenting styles. And the way that I always like to explain it is there's almost 2 ingredients to parenting that we like to kind of differentiate. So we think about control, and then we also think about warmth. Those are kind of the 2 pieces. So warmth being someone who's really affectionate, maybe there's emotional connection, control being very maybe rigid, or there's a lot of structure. So control and warmth can look very different. But when we think about the 4 different parenting styles, there's going to be different levels of the control and warmth in each of those parenting styles. So for permissive parenting, that's our first type of parenting. That's a parent that has really high warmth, but there's not as much control. So these are typically parents that allow their child to almost be the boss, or they allow their child to be the parent in the household. Yeah, whatever you want to do. Or this might be a parent that when we think about like bedtime routine, their child chooses the bedtime routine, right? So this is a child that very much has the control in the house. There's very little control that a parent's providing, but there's a lot of warmth there, right? Then there is the authoritarian parents. And so this is actually a parent that's almost like the complete opposite. So this is a parent that has very high control, but very little warmth. So this is a parent that
kind of my way is the highway.
Yeah, I would say that, like a parent that very much has very rigid, this is what it has to be, doesn't really listen to their child. If their child has something that they need to ask their parent, it's very much like, well, this is just what it is, right? And there's very little areas of understanding in that capacity. It's very much like, I'm the parent, so this is what it is. So in this case, when we think about like bedtime routine, for example, it's like your bedtime routine is 9:00. Maybe they didn't provide their child with any warning, and then that's just what it is. So that's authoritarian. And then there's also an uninvolved parent, which is where there's actually very little control or warmth. So this is just a parent that's very uninvolved. Many times that could be either they're physically absent, so maybe they're just not in the household, but it can actually be a parent that's also emotionally absent. So it could be a parent that is in the household, but just isn't emotionally there. Their child needs them, they're seeking them, and their parent is maybe watching TV, or they're just very uninvolved in that way.
On their phones.
On their phones. That's a big one. So it's very much like you're on your own. You can handle it. So many times these kids feel a little bit out of control. And then I would say the last type of parenting, which obviously is what we're going to probably focus on the most today, is authoritative parents. So authoritative parents, when we think about control and we also think about warmth, these are parents that provide high levels of both. So it's parents that very much will say to a child, let's talk about it. Like, I see that we're kind of struggling a little bit. Let's talk about it. Let's really try to get a deeper sense of what's going on. But they're also still providing structure and consistency and predictability and all of those things at the same time. So if we're thinking about like a bedtime routine, for example, this might be a parent that they might talk to their child about, let's create a bedtime routine together. Let's talk about what your nighttime routine looks like. Your bedtime is still 9:00. We want to make sure that you're ready for school the next day, but let's have you check it off and let's talk about it. So they're very much still providing control. They're saying you do have that bedtime routine, but there's also warmth that kind of goes within that.